Okay, welcome back to the channel, everyone. I have Flight Log Maker version 5.3 1B is the actual uh, number, the version number on the program. And so today we're going to load a Cessna 172 and we're going to load it with pressing the read aircraft file. If you have any questions about how to use any of the buttons on this page, you can go to the help file here. It shows you what to do. And if you have any questions for me, you can contact me. This email is not valid, but you can contact me through thingsprogram.blog, and there's a link where you can send me an email there. So we've got the Cessna 172 loaded, and it says this aircraft is regular, which is down here, and that means that this has to be left at 0. If we put it at 16 and then we go somewhere and we try to say if we were to calculate that, we can't right now, we don't have any information. What it would do though is it would give us an error. So I'm going to say the fuel is 750 per gallon, and we'll say we're going to cruise at 3,000 feet at 2,300 RPM. Outside air temperature, we'll say is 70. We'll say the temperature at 3,000 feet is 60. If you prefer to use Celsius, Celsius is right along the side of the other temperature there, so you can use that. And then I'm just going to leave the pressure set to 2992 for now. LPT1 is if you do a direct printing from the computer to a printer. Usually you can select the COM port or one of the LPT ports. Generally, you just leave it at LPT1, and that's usually good enough. We'll say we're going to burn a gallon and a half and the start taxi takeoff, and we'll say the rate of descent is going to be at 500 feet per minute. And then we'll go over to this page here. We're going to hit get trip, and we're going to do, let's see, we're going to do the Indianapolis Madison, and we'll load that. So what that did is it wrote to a file, and now we're going to read that file. So there it is. You can see that these files have not been accessed in a while. So again, you would want to make sure that you have correct. This is something I saved a long time ago, and you'd want to make sure that all these frequencies are still the same. So anyway, we have to put some fuel on the airplane. So we'll go ahead and load 40 gallons in there for now. And then we'll hit calculate. And so there's the trip, starting out with Indianapolis Direct VHP VOR. From there, we're flying Victor Airways. So they're published and they give you the magnetic courses and everything. And then the VORs, I put in the frequency. So you can have that at your fingertips when you go fly from VOR to VOR. I know nowadays a lot of people fly with GPS, so you might not want to use that. You might want to just put direct. Anyway, here's your wind correction, the magnetic heading to fly. These are the ground speeds for each of the leg, and they're averaged in by calculating the ground speed times the distance traveled, just like a moment type thing with like you do with weight and balance, and then you divide everything by divide the total moments by the number of legs, and it comes up with this average ground speed. This is a 2 hour and 50-minute flight, which would use about 27.8 gallons of fuel. On our first leg, we do add a little bit more. I kind of figure an extra 10% above cruise when we're climbing at full power. So here it's showing that both of these performance data files are N172 PFDAT. That means normal conditions. So that would be within the normal conditions. And we're actually 6 degrees above standard. 15 is standard for the elevation at Indianapolis. And then a density altitude of 1523 is given. And then the standard temperature at 3,000 feet is 9 degrees, and we're 6 degrees above that, but it's still within the normal range. So what Flight Log Maker does is it will switch to either above or below standard conditions and open a different performance file when the temperature is either above standard by 20 degrees Fahrenheit or below standard by 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Down here we have, we're at 3,000 feet, but we're flying at a density altitude of 3,726 feet. On departure, we'll depart using a VY speed of 75, and that should give us about 610 feet per minute rate of climb. And where I'm getting all this information is from the pilot's operating handbook under performance, which you can find that in your POH. At cruise, if we wanted to climb at VY, we'd still use 75, but we would only get 560 feet per minute rate of climb out of the airplane at that altitude. The cruise true airspeed is 103 knots. We're going to burn about 6.8 gallons per hour. And the airplane did find the performance setting for 2,300 RPM, so that's what that used. If you do pick a wrong power setting, which I can do right now, but I'll just finish this up here. So we're going to climb using about 5 nautical miles to get to 3,000 feet, and then we'll use about 7.3 nautical miles descending at 500 feet per minute. And then this is just letting you know that Flight Log Maker uses a 1 hour reserve, even though the minimum for VFR flight is 45 minutes. I like to use an hour, so I programmed this flight planner to assume you're going to have an hour's worth of reserve. And it's estimating the cost, this is the fuel, at $208.54. So if we go back here, if we do put something in here, say a wet rate, and it comes up with something that 208 would get deducted from whatever we ended up owing. So we'll go back here, and I'll show you another thing here. The heading is 325 on the first leg, but what if I put 370 in there accidentally? And then I tried to calculate that. You're going to see that it catches it right away. It tells you that you got to use a heading between 1 and 360. So we'll go back there, and then I'll just reload the trip. That should change it back. There we go. And if I don't have 40 gallons of gas on board, say we got 35, let's go and see what happens when we do that. Nothing. So we're still using 27.8 gallons. Let's go back and cut it down to about 33. Okay, so now what happens is just giving us a fuel caution. If we have 33 gallons of fuel on there when we take off, and we're going to use 27.8, that's less than 6 gallons left. And since we burn 6.8 gallons per hour, that's going to be less than an hour's worth of fuel left. So that means we're going to throw that into, on this leg somewhere. It might be when we get to Madison, or it could be somewhere on the leg, but based on the fuel burn, what we have left is where we've actually burned into the reserve a little bit. If I cut that even back farther, let's go down to about 30 gallons. And now that's going to be even worse. So we're still at 27.8 gallons, but now we only have 30 gallons, on board. So that's less than 3 gallons. It's more like 2.2 gallons left, and that is less than 30 minutes. And that's why that fuel warning is in red. The red means that you have anywhere from 30 minutes to 1 minute left. So you actually have to do the calculation in your head and know what you put on the airplane. But I would not fly with it like this. This is just warning you that you're going to be awful low in fuel. anything in the wind could cause you not to have enough fuel to get to Madison. So I would not flight plan with this. I would either plan a stop, or I would wait for favorable wind. There's a lot of things you could do to prevent that. And the main thing you could do is maybe leave some freight behind, and have your passengers carry less weight, and then you could go ahead and put the full 40 gallons on there, and then you would be able to be in the green. And that's what you want to be able to flight plan with everything in the green. So I used to just put the color coding on the final amount of fuel, but you didn't really know where that started occurring. So then I went and I rewrote some things, and I changed it so that you could actually tell what leg it was uh, cutting into the reserve. And then it would color code change as you burned that fuel off. So it would either just stay green, or go green to yellow, or green to yellow to red. And green to yellow is not good. Uh, we're technically supposed to have 45 minutes of fuel left on the airplane when we land. Uh, but if you have to use it, you got to use it, right? So when you go in the red, though, that's just not acceptable, and you don't want that. Another thing with Flight Log Maker is, if you were to flight plan a flight and you picked an altitude that was, say, too high, like on this leg here, we wouldn't have to worry about it. But if we were flying between airports that were real close to one another, say maybe 15 or 20, we'll just say they're only 15 miles or 10 miles apart from one another, and you go in here and you accidentally select 8,000 as your cruise altitude, maybe you don't remember doing that. Maybe you're not aware that the airplane is not going to make it to 8,000 feet and then have enough room to descend and land. But anyway, the flight planner will catch that, and it won't let you flight plan until you correct it. So, uh, saving a log, we just created this Indy Madison log. And so I'm going to bring it up here, and we'll have a look at it. Let's see, where is it at here? Uh, I don't think it's there. Indy. There it is. So anyway, yeah, it's just letting us know we got more than 60 minutes of usable fuel at the end of the trip. Here's our airplane and our power setting and our fuel. The distance to fly, average ground speed, time and route, and fuel. Departure and arrival frequencies. Now you're going to put those in there, and then again, every 56 days, you should be checking that to make sure that. But this is a nice piece of paper you could put out in a clipboard and have it available, and just look at some things. And you can play around with this before you actually go on a trip, and just kind of see where you're at with the fuel and everything, so that you know that you got enough to make it all the way. There are other trips here where you could fly a farther distance, and you'd be asked to uh, use every bit of fuel that you have in the airplane just to get there, and then have enough reserve left over in case of an emergency. So if we go back, you can change aircraft. We can leave the power settings like that. If I wanted to, I could go back to 152 and load that in there. And we could just leave everything as is. And we got to go back and put 24 gallons in there, and then correct that. And then, so on this trip, you would actually have to have 24.11 gallons. So a Cessna 152 would not be able to do this trip given the wind and everything that we put in there. And I could change that, but I'm not going to bother with that. It's just letting you know that that airplane is not going to work out for this trip unless you plan a fuel stop somewhere. So you go back and you can just put back the 172 in there again. And And we'll just say you got 40 gallons. Oh, and there we go. And there's your trip again. Now, if I change the weather, say we go to maybe let's see, it's 20 degrees outside. We'll say we'll say over at cruising altitude, we'll say it's like 0, and we'll leave everything the same here, and we'll continue back to the calculate page. Now you'll see that we're 21 degrees below standard with that current temperature of 20 degrees. And we're at a negative 1744 for a density altitude. A cruise, again, standard temperature is 9 degrees, but we're 26 degrees below that. So we've shifted over now to this below standard file. So if you look at another video I did, I have a performance file manager tool that shows you how these files are related to one another, and you can go and look at that video, and it kind of shows you how to use everything there. So yeah, we have a density altitude of minus 146 feet at 3,000 feet. So you know the engine is going to be performing very well, but it's also going to be using a lot more fuel. And you'll see here, now we're using 7.1 gallons. The cruise airspeed is 101, and the departure rate of climb is 695, and it's only 645 at cruise, but it's still a lot better than it was when it was warmer out. Let's go and change something else. Let's go back here, and we'll say we're going to use 2,500 RPM as our cruise RPM. I'm not sure if this is going to work. So we calculate that there, and actually there is a power setting for that. And it's because we're in cold temperatures. So let me switch it back to something else here. Let's go back. Let's set it for 2,600 RPM. I know that's not going to be good. So now what it is, it's flashing these. It's just letting me know that, hey, I couldn't find that power setting. 2,600 RPM is not in my file. So it did it for takeoff, and then it went back and looked at it again for cruise, and says, no, I couldn't find that. So what did it do? Well, it used 2,200 RPM. And that's because in our default file, 2,200 RPM is the RPM for the default power setting. So that gives you something, even if you make a mistake, it gives you a ballpark number to start with. And if you don't want to use 2,200, now you can go back, say, oh, 2,200. All right, well, how about 2,300? And then you can see if it's going to work. And now they're not flashing anymore because it found that. And so it's going to use 2,300 feet. And there's your performance at cruise. So that's Flight Log Maker version 5.31. And if you have any questions on it, you can email me at ronlewis@mailfence.com. And if you go to my website, there is a link on the links page, and you can email me with a question there if you want. And I can answer it hopefully to the best of my ability. But anyway, that's the program here, and it's free for download with all the other tools, and it works right now with 12 aircraft. And I'm hoping that people will download it and start creating their own aircraft files and then submitting them so that we can start building other aircraft, and then we can include it in the program so that other people with aircraft like kit airplanes, for example, this is a great tool for somebody that maybe has, that has limited resources and wants a decent flight planner for planning flights somewhere, and wants to make sure that they've got enough fuel to go where they want to go. This would be a great tool for them to use. So anyway, that's all for today, and hope you enjoyed the program, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.